Hey mama, are you a multi-passionate mom who is juggling all the things, nursing a baby, battling laundry, trying to keep it together and keep a spicy marriage, and feeling like you're feeling all of it? What's up? I'm Ashley Carroll. I'm here to hold your hand through this process because I believe when you're ready to take control of your life, beat the limiting excuses, step into your own power, you can not only survive, but you can thrive. But you're gonna have to show up for yourself. It's time for me to tough love your way through prioritization, taking self-care seriously, getting rid of excuses, reconnecting with your family, kids, and spouse, and quite honestly, learning to love the chaos because the glory is in the journey. It's in the mess. In this podcast, you will find balance for busy mamas, navigating mom guilt, time management strategies, and everything in between with no fluff and lots of fun. Let's go. What's up? What's up? I'm super excited that you're here. You're listening to the Social Girls podcast. You chose me, Ma, your friend, and your most hated probably podcast host as I tell you the things you probably don't want to hear the most. But out of love, you guys, out of love. So here today, we were talking about something that is honestly, when I was thinking about this episode and working on this episode and what I wanted to share with you, this is honestly my shortcoming. Like, I am awful at this, and it is because probably my having to do with my upbringing and something of that nature. Like, I haven't really dug into why I do what I do. No, that's a lie. I can tell you right off the bat right now that it is probably me responding in fight or flight mode because that is what I've learned to do all my life. And then also to put up a wall because I, grew up believing and feeling like if I put up this wall, then it would protect myself and I would either hurt the person before they could hurt me, or I would respond quicker so that way I would hurt less, or so I thought anyways. And so what we're talking about today is being emotional, all up in your feels, okay? But I think it's totally fine and natural to be an empath. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about responding, or not even responding, reacting with your emotions, and that being your primary form of response whenever something happens. So if you're with me, here we go. Okay, so tell me if you can relate to this. We're going to go back, throw it back high school style. You hear from a friend or somebody tells you that your man is doing you dirty or that he's breaking up with you. If your first reaction was to freak out, run and find him and confront him, and you could feel your emotions bubbling inside of you and rising, and you either yell at him or maybe you do something behind his back to get back at him, right? Because you want to be the first one to make the jab, oh, wait a minute, you're not breaking up with me, I'm breaking up with you, right? If you can relate to that, you're probably an emotional responder. If you can relate to calling your husband 1,000 times and him not answering, and then when he finally does answer, you're so riled up because you've already created this plot in your head of the things that he's doing because he's not answering his phone, that when you finally get on the phone with him, you're chewing him out. Where have you been? What were you doing? Why didn't you answer my call? Blah, 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 blah. Instead of just thinking, okay, realistically, he's at work, so he's probably doing work things or talking to work people, and he's probably not intentionally ignoring me, or maybe he is, if you're being like how you're being, he's probably intentionally ignoring you. But, so here's the deal. I can say this and laugh about this because I struggle with this. I'm aware of it. I'm trying really hard. It's really hard to get over this because it's so physical, but it's also so psychological that you can't work on one without the other, right? So you are trying so hard in your mind to be cool and control your emotions, but at the same time, you can feel it in your bones, in your jellies, that things are getting intense and you need a way to let it out, right? So today we're going to be talking about ways to handle your emotions so you're not going crazy all the time. You're not just this very high, this is when you do this high emotions, and then you drop down low, and then you're going high, and then you're going low, because that's dangerous because you're constantly giving your body the shot of adrenaline, and then you're way low, right? And so I think people who respond emotionally are more prone to anxiety and depression, and obviously your blood pressure. Man, when I get heated, I could just feel oh my gosh, my blood pressure is probably just skyrocketing right now. I don't know that it is, but that's what it feels like inside. So I want to talk to you guys about that and how to manage it, how I'm managing it, and just things that we can do to not let our emotions control ourselves. Like, we got to take control. All right. So here we go. The first thing we got to do, you guys, is just respond versus react. Reacting is when you're quick to cut somebody off, right? Like, you're having a conversation with your husband and you already know in your mind that they're wrong or that they don't understand you or that you don't want to hear anything that they have to say. And so you're just like, you can't wait to get in there, right? Like, you can't wait to cut them off, to let them know that you know what you're talking about or that you're right or that, to whatever. That's a sign you're probably reacting. Or when you can feel the verbal vomit rising, like you're just ready to just like lay it all out there. Okay. There is a difference. Reacting is instant. It's instant and you do it without thought. Responding takes time. It takes consideration. It takes a logistical approach more than an emotional approach. Okay. So here's how we can respond versus react is we need to take a moment or maybe even 6 minutes or 10 minutes before responding. And if we have these conversations with our spouses or with people around us that are close to us and they get to know us, we can say like, hey, sometimes I'm really quick to react and it has nothing to do with like you or the situation. It's just like my shortcoming. Okay. And so sometimes I need a moment to just digest and like gather myself before I just go off the deep end. And when you tell people that, they're more likely to understand you and just give you that space when you need it. And it doesn't seem like you're just checking out of the situation. Right. So like, you don't want to just pause, like when your husband and you are in a heated argument and you just like fall silent because you need to take 6 minutes because what do they do that you hate most, right? It's like when you're in an argument and then all of a sudden they just like don't respond. You're like, okay, so like you're not gonna say anything, Again, emotional response, right? And so you don't want to do the same thing to them. You don't want to just like pause after they have no idea what you're doing or what you're needing to do. Like, you haven't had this discussion with them. They have no idea you're on this journey to becoming a better responder, right? And so they're going to be like, hello, what are you doing? I'm talking to you. Like, it's going to make the argument more heated or the conversation more awkward. And so they don't think you're just not responding. Say something like, hey, give me a second to digest and respond. I'm trying not to respond emotionally. I want to respond or react emotionally. I want to respond in a healthy way or whatever you want to say. Okay. I think that's something, again, you guys, like as I'm saying this, I know my husband is listening to this and these are things that I need to work on. And this is how I wrote this episode. So I'm having a hard time getting through this without laughing because I don't do any of these things very well anyways. So I'm going to work on it though. And once you're aware of it, I think that's the key, right? Like as long as you're aware of it and you're working on it, then there's going to be growth and there's going to be goodness that comes from it. So something I need to work on. Okay, the next thing is to take deep breaths. This is what we practice with our kiddos because when you're kids, everything is a big deal, right? Like, oh my gosh, you threw away my sucker on accident. The whole world is lost. Never again will I get a lemonade cherry, whatever. That's on my brain because I just threw away my son's sucker that my husband told him he would save. He left it on the sink countertop, unwrapped, nothing. And so I was just like, oh, well, I guess like my son was done with this or he forgot about it. So I threw it in the trash. And then the next morning, of course, then it ran through my mind, like, this is here for a reason. Maybe I should ask somebody what they need it for. And then I was like, no, but that's kind of gross. It's been sitting here for a while. Like, it surely isn't going to sit overnight and then he's going to put it back in his mouth. Oh gosh, I should know better than motherhood by now, right? So my son walks up in the morning and he's like, hey mom, like I can't wait to eat my sucker. Can I go have it right now? And I'm like, what are you talking about? What sucker? And he's like, well, dad put it out and he told me he left it on the sink counter for me and I was going to eat it this morning. And I was like, and then I was like, how about you eat it later? And then he was like, okay. Cause I know my son is an emotional reactor. And so I was like, oh, dang it. But like, I don't want him to get home and then deal with this too. Like, it's going to build up that he's like looking for it all day long and he can't wait to have it till after school, which is when I told him he maybe can have it. And so I was like, hey buddy, where was this sucker? Like, cause now I got to retrack my steps. Right. And so I'm like, oh, bud, I threw it away because I didn't know what it was for. Mommy and daddy didn't communicate that I needed to save it. And so I'm really sorry. And I said, but hey, there's always more before, because I could already tell him when I told him I messed up. I was like, hey, take a deep breath. I was like, because there's more suckers. I can buy more suckers at the store. And this is how we respond, even as adults. It's not about suckers, but we forget that like there can always be a solution, right? It doesn't always have to be like so dramatic and so like, this is the death of me. Like there is no other way. It must be this way, right? And we get in our feels about it that way in motherhood too, because we idealize our day, we idealize our plans, the way that we want to do things with our kids. And as we know, children are unpredictable. Parenting is unpredictable. And so we have this mindset, or ideal image of what things are going to look like. And when it doesn't go that way, we have a hard time pivoting and then adjusting to our day to be like, okay, it didn't happen this way. I'm not going to freak out. Let's just roll with plan B. Or like, maybe you don't even have a plan B and that's what freaks you out. It's that you just have to roll with whatever you can come up with on the fly. And so the next step, which I think is what fits in perfectly here, is to assess your feelings. Are you being emotionally triggered because of an action, like something that somebody did that brought up something that somebody else did a long time ago to where it's triggering you to like, they didn't even mean to offend you or to upset you or to cause rise in your emotions, but like this reminds you of that. And so now you're like on edge. A word that something said in your past, or is it that you are exhausted, like you've got zero sleep, you're taking care of a newborn, you feel like you're carrying all the plate and all the weight of all the things, and so now whenever like somebody asks you, hey, do you want cheese on your bread, you're just like, what? I don't like cheese, like right? And it has nothing to do with them, or maybe it does a little bit, right? But it's not the action that they did, it's that it's triggering for you and it's causing an emotional reaction. And so we need to, or sometimes it's lies infiltrating us. Like the enemy loves to steal, kill, and destroy. And this is something that I've learned a lot lately and that I felt very passionately about telling everybody because it's constantly happening to me. And since I have been able to point it out and call it out, then I'm able to then be like, okay, this is not true. I cannot respond to this because he wins. Like, the enemy wants nothing more than to see you riled up, to see you crashing, to see him debilitate you, to keep you from further doing good for the kingdom of God, or, in your household or in your marriage or in your job, in the workplace, or really doing anything for that matter, right? And so sometimes there's these lies that get in your head of, I'm not good enough. He doesn't love me anymore. Maybe he would be better with somebody else. Maybe somebody else could serve him that isn't so emotionally reactive, right? And like, these are the lies that I would tell myself before. So like, my husband would never tell me those things, but because we're such high, like, what is that word? Gosh, highly critical of ourselves. We're our worst judgers. The enemy takes full advantage of our thoughts, and then takes the things that we already have, the fears that we already have, the insecurities that we already have, and then twists them and says, you are this. And then we believe it. And then when somebody makes us feel like that may be true, we emotionally react because we don't know what to do. We're like, oh crap, it must be true now. Now I feel like it is, right? Like before it was just a thought now. So we need to take a moment and ask ourselves if the thoughts going through our head are really true. So again, you could be like, hey, I need a second. I just need a second and sometimes I think even verbalizing that to your spouse of like, hey, I think that I have a lot of lies. Like I think I've once told my husband that before, like I have a lot of lies just clowning my head. Tell me some truths really quickly. Like, because I struggle with that. That's something that, coming from a traumatic past and a very emotionally reactive past, everything was very toxic and very negative and very just, it felt eventful, but it was just very where you're in that flight or fight mode all the time. And so everything feels like it has to be and is very dramatic, I guess. And like you have to always respond that way. And because toxicity, like those kind of relationships are very high and very low, when I am in a stable environment, it feels odd. It used to feel really odd to me. And so anyways, that's here nor there. But you have to tell your spouse, like, I need a second, or tell me some truths really quickly because I'm struggling with feeling and thinking a lot of lies about myself or a lot of lies about our marriage or blah, blah, blah. And then he can know to quickly speak into your life. And then usually after that, you're able to diffuse the situation, or at least your emotions can go down a little bit, right? Because now you feel safe, you feel secure, you don't feel so on edge, or like you have to be guarded, or like you have to be on attack, right? And so I think if you can call it out, acknowledge and find what are your triggers, if like what are the things in the past that trigger you, the things that people say that trigger you. For me, it's men talking back to me or talking down to me, or in a very controlling way, or certain verbiage or words that can be said in a certain way. There's certain situations that trigger an emotional reaction from me because I'm fearful that they'll happen again. And so that I have verbalized to my spouse, which I encourage you to do too, because the more you let them in, guys, the more you let them in, the more they can understand where you're coming from. And then they can immediately stop what they're doing and then help you sort that out, because they know it's no longer about them or what they said or the situation or the argument. It's because you're struggling with something else. Okay. And then they don't take it personal, and then they can help you work through it. But if they have no idea, then they have no idea, you guys. They have no idea where you're coming from, what you're thinking, like what is going on for that matter. And you can't work as a team, a partnership, which you're called to work as anyways, right? So let them in, guys. And tell them that you need to take a moment and ask yourself, are these thoughts true? Is this action really, what's going on today in this action? Is what they said really, did they really mean to cause me to feel this way? Or are they just saying something that makes me remember something that made me feel this way? And then you always want to share your feelings, right? Men, I feel like in movies, this is portrayed as like an awful thing that women do, share our feelings, and we talk and they don't listen, blah, blah, blah. But again, it doesn't have to be like this long, let me sit down with you on the couch and tell you how I feel, blah, blah, blah. It's just you saying, hey, I feel overwhelmed and it's coming off as being short. I'm sorry. You could save your long drawn out stories for another day, but in the moment, you can just say something like, I'm feeling overwhelmed. I've had a lot on my plate. I'm sorry that I am, like, you can even give a pre-warning, right? Like, hey, hello, give a man a heads up, okay? I would like a heads up, because otherwise I take it personally. I think that when I say something and my husband snaps at me, before I even know that his day was like super crammed with stressful conversations or what, this and that and the other, right? Like, I take it personally, like, what did I just do? Like, so give each other a heads up. Let them know how you're feeling ahead of time, or even in the moment of like, this has me really triggered right now. I'm feeling really overwhelmed. I feel like my emotions are going off the scale, like, and it doesn't make any sense, has nothing to do with you. Or maybe, just whatever you're feeling, just be like, all right, I need to check out, come back. And like, can we have this conversation when I've calmed down? Can we have this conversation? You guys know that the worst fights come when you continue to push and push, even though you should like take a break, take a moment, take a step back, and you just continue to like work through it, and you're just like in the mud. I just can see like, it's like a UFC fight, right? Like, you're just like bloody massacre everywhere, and you're just like keep beating him up with the same, but you didn't do the dishes. And it's just like this awful, ugly fight. And then finally one of you feels like you've come to this like succession, and the other one is just like pulverized, right? Like, we don't want to do that to each other. We can't. Okay. So if one of you is winning, the other is losing. Because if you're a team, right? A teammate on a basketball team, like if one of your teammates is showing off and doing their own thing on their own, the whole team as a whole probably ain't doing that great, right? If you're thinking about yourself and you're not working as a team. So if one of you is winning, you're both losing. The next thing I would say is to do something to snap out of it. For me, we just get in this funk sometimes, right? Like, we wake up and we know, all right, I'm already triggered. Like, we don't have any rhyme or reason for it. We just woke up and we're like, don't talk to me. It's going to be a rough day, right? Like, we just know sometimes. Or sometimes in the moment, we can just feel like we're emotionally triggered right then. And we're going to emotionally react. And so maybe it's that you can already feel it coming on, or that it already is there and present and you're aware of it. And then you can be like, hey, I need to do something to snap out of this real quick. Like, and maybe it's even before you are in the situation, like I said, but you can go walk. You can journal it out. So that way you're verbal vomiting on paper instead of verbal attacking somebody. And like, because words are hard to forget, man. There are things that have been said that are like super dumb, but man, because it had such an emotionally high intensity situation attached to it, those are the things that we remember the most. Think about all the times that you've had a conversation or a fight, and out of all the things in your life, the instances that you remember are not necessarily important or milestones or like, this, that, the other. Is because there was some sort of emotional response that made it hardwired into your brain. And that is what happens when we have these emotional highs and stuff, is because our brain says, oh no, this is important. This was traumatic. I need to remember this so I can protect myself in the future, or I can use it as some sort of armor, right? And so we need to do something to snap out of it before we have those emotional responses. So walking, taking a bath, journaling, not scrolling. I know that it's easy to just like go into another room, sit on the couch and feel like you're vegging out and do mindless scrolling. But the thing is that social media and things cause us to be so reactive already that all you're doing is building on top of, like, you're putting more fuel on the fire essentially. And so even though it feels like it's just mindless and it's relaxing, I don't know, don't do it. This is not the time to use that as a coping mechanism to come down off of your emotions, because it's not going to work. You're going to feel more triggered, more anxious, more irritable. Because again, like, social media tends to be the place where we measure ourselves up to other people. It's triggering because the news is on there. Our so-and-so mother-in-law's grandson's sister's on there. I don't know, like people that just trigger you, right? And so don't use that as a mechanism, because it ain't gonna work. You're gonna be more irritable than ever. Lastly, I wanted to talk about, when I was researching and thinking of things, I came upon this video by Preston Smiles, and although I don't agree with everything that, because their belief system is a little different, this thing that he said about emotionally responding really hit home, and it was to celebrate when you notice yourself not reacting emotionally, because it creates a new cycle, versus when you beat yourself up over and over again because you failed or you did it. Oh my gosh, I did it again. Why am I so like this? Like, why do I do this? Because we tend to do that. We tend to be so critical of ourselves, and we focus in and hone in on the things that we didn't do well or the way that we messed up. And then that's what we remember again and again and again. And so that's the place that we go to, because we've trained our brains that this is what we do. This is what we can expect from ourselves. And, like blah, 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 right? But if you do the opposite, if you just acknowledge the fact that you responded, don't make a big deal about it, right? When you emotionally react, versus when you finally don't, and you're able to use some of these skills, like take a deep breath, or take a moment and assess your feelings, or express to your partner what's going on before you respond, and you're actually taking time to respond before just reacting. That's the time you need to be like, yes, I did it. That was awesome. Like, and you need to, because that is training your brain that you can do something new. This is how you respond now. This is great, like, right? And so then you'll go there every time a new situation arises, and this is how habits are created, and we can do less emotional reacting and more responding rationally. Rational responding. Okay, so we're going to respond versus react. How we're going to do that? We're going to take a moment before responding. We're going to take deep breaths. We're going to take a break. We're going to assess our feelings. Then we're going to share our feelings. How do we do that? By letting our spouses, the people we love, know what's going on in our life, right? Like, know what we're dealing with. And then 3, we're going to do something to snap out of it, to break that pattern, and to tell your brain, nope, not today, right? Okay. And lastly, I just want to give you guys, can you hear my toddler? I don't know what he's doing, but he's hilarious. Okay. Lastly, there's these reminders that I wanted to tell you. 90% of the things we worry about don't happen. So we are worry-warts, and 90% of it is not going to happen. That already should alleviate a lot of your emotional reacting right there. Knowing that whenever you go into a situation or something that's going down, like all the what ifs, this, that, the other, 90% of the things we worry about aren't going to happen. And so we can better control our emotions, having comfort in knowing that usually the worst that we imagine isn't really what goes down. Okay, so I have 5 of these reminders for you. The first one was that 90% of the things we worry about don't happen. The next one is you cannot change what has already happened. A lot of the times we like to just mule over the past and like, oh, if I had done this, blah, blah, blah. Okay, woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? Like, you can't. It already happened, so let's not focus on what was, and let's focus on what is and what can and will, what we do have control over in the future. The third reminder is these feelings are only momentary. They are fleeting, right? We feel risen right now because of something that has happened right in this moment. But if we snap out of it, if we choose to use these tools, it doesn't go any further than that. It's over. So reminding ourselves, because I think that one of the things that I would get is like, I can't get over it because I'm fearful that there's some sort of truth or like bigger picture to what I'm feeling. No, this is right now because something triggered you to feel this way. And then in 20 minutes or tomorrow, you're going to remember that like you still love the person you're with and they're the best friend that you've ever had and blah, 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 right? Like you're able to rationally think because you remember those truths and you remember that fights and conflict are only momentary. So if you remember that sooner, then you can get over it sooner and feel better. And again, combat those lies and fill yourself with truth. And then you can better handle a situation or move on and feel better in a more healthy manner. The fourth reminder I have for you is you can only control how you respond. We have zero control over our spouses, our friends, our relatives. We can't control the way that they respond. Now we can influence, encourage, inspire by example, right? But like we really have no control. We can do what we can. We can be good examples. But at the end of the day, they control their body. They control their actions. It's how you show up and how you handle the situation that will make the difference because you only have control over yourself. Okay, and then the last reminder, the fifth reminder that I have for you guys is that when you react to someone else's, or your own emotions, you no longer have control over what you can control. Have you ever been in a situation where you let your emotions steal the wheel and now it feels like you're going off the rails? Because we all know emotions cloud our judgment, right? Our emotions are crazy. We do stupid things when we let our emotions control, and we can have proof of that, right? If we look at things that we've done in our past, we're like, oh yeah, that was probably not the best decision because I wasn't thinking. We constantly say that. I wasn't thinking. I don't know. I wasn't thinking, right? Maybe we need to pay attention to that because maybe it ain't so good that you're not thinking. It's not good that we're letting our emotions steer the wheel. So again, you guys, like I feel like this is such a hard habit to break. I'm 10 years in, almost 10 years into my marriage, you guys, and I just barely feel like I'm on the cusp of maintaining this and doing a better job because it's so hardwired in us to respond emotionally because there's such a high that you get from it, right? Like your body physiologically gets a high from when you're in this fight or flight mode, constantly going high, low, high, low. So again, like I think there's just proof in the pudding. Like it's small steps every day, acknowledging it, I can't speak today, and being aware. And then knowing that like you taking these little steps every day will make a big difference, and it matters, right? People can see when you're trying. And I think that matters most. I think that we need to stop being so judgmental about when we fall short and be really proud and celebratory about the fact that we are aware and that we're making changes and that we're taking the baby steps and that they'll pay off in the long run. So it's worth it, and it's worth growing and investing and doing the work and figuring out why and what triggers you. And also, you will feel much better. I feel mentally and physically, because it's exhausting going high, low, constantly. You're constantly on alert. You're constantly on edge. You're just constantly being controlled by emotions, and that is exhausting. It's exhausting. It's a mind F, right? Like, I don't want to say that word, but it messes you up a little bit. And so take care of your mental wellness. Take care of your relationship, your health, and do the work. So hopefully this episode was helpful to you. Hopefully you got some nuggets out of there. If you know a mama or a friend who would benefit from hearing some of this, that, I mean, you don't need to call her out or anything. Be like, hey girl, like this reminds me a little bit of you. You could use some of these tips. Like, don't be like that. Okay. Let me be like that. No, but like in general, if this podcast you find is helpful for other women, share this with them so that way they can too find the nuggets that you found and do something with it and make better improvements to their mental health, their wellness, their motherhood, their marriage, what have you. And so I'd appreciate it if you could share, subscribe, snap a little screenshot of your favorite episodes, throw them up on IG stories, whatever, tag me. I'd love to see them. And again, really just leaving a review and subscribing is the best thing that you could do. But at the end of the day, I just want you to know that I'm grateful for you. You're an amazing woman. You're an amazing mama. You're an amazing wife. You were put on this earth for a purpose, and you are here for a purpose, and you matter. And you're awesome. So I hope you have a great day, and I will catch you guys next time.